Yo, what is up, YouTube? Man, this video is probably the hardest video I've ever made on this channel. I made a video a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago or two, about my life. And I explained a lot about it, and I explained how my grandpa, on my dad's side, had lung cancer. Yesterday at 9:23 in the morning, at the nursing home, the cancer took over my grandpa and beat my grandpa. What I'm saying is that he didn't win the battle. He passed away yesterday. And I'm sad. There's just so much emotion going through my mind. I lost a best friend. I lost the man who taught me how to be the man I am today, pretty much. I just lost my best friend, pretty much. And it sucks. I have so many memories with the man, too. Like, all the times we went fishing, all the times we went to Minnesota, and all the times we sat in his shop and we just BS'd. The times he picked me up from school and would look at me and say, no matter what grade I was in, before I was even driving, he would look at me and say, was she there today? And I had to look at him and be like, Grandpa, I don't have a girlfriend. And he would look at me and say, you wouldn't BS old Grandpa, would you? And I never BS'd him because I never had a girlfriend besides one time. And when he asked me that, I was finally able to tell him yes. And then he would be like, did you pat her on the pooper? I don't know why Grandpa never said butt or ass, but there's maybe a reason why. Pooper's kind of funnier. There's a spider right in front of me. I hate those damn things. Times we went fishing. My grandpa was probably the greatest fisherman I will ever know. There was one time when I was little, and we went fishing to this place called Bear Creek Lake here in Colorado, and I didn't have a pole holder at a time. You like put it in the dirt and it holds your poles, and when the fish bite, you could like tell by the pole holder and like how the fishing pole bends. Well, I didn't have one of those at the time, and my grandpa decided to put two big rocks together and put my pole in the middle of it. And I was little at the time. I was pretty young. I was like 4 or 5 or something like that. I really can't remember. And stupid fly. And we were sitting there fishing, and all of a sudden my fishing pole is in the water because a fish bit on the pole and got the hook stuck in his mouth and was trying to fight away from the hook. Well, the fish won the battle against my fishing pole and took the pole into the water. And I'll never forget looking at my grandpa. I was young, but I've remembered this ever since. I started crying, and I was like, Grandpa, you don't have to give me a new fishing pole. You don't have to give me a new fishing pole. And he was like, watch this, Sonny. And he called everyone Sonny pretty much. One time I was called Bubba. One second I was Sonny. Then I've always been called Bud, pretty much, or Buddy, my whole life from him. And he said, watch this, Sonny, and reeled in his fishing line and stuff. Threw his line back out, reeled it back in again, threw it back out, reeled it back in, threw it back out. And when he was reeling back in, and when his hook was getting to the shore, there was a fishing pole with it, which was mine. And we got the fishing pole in. Well, Grandpa kept reeling. and the fish came in with my fishing pole. I'll never forget that. Like that, what other person could really do that? My grandpa was a pretty good fisherman, and you could have better stories than that, but that is one story of Grandpa and I fishing, which I'll never forget. Probably till the day I die, or, the day I start losing my memory, if I ever do, and stuff. So that is one really fun fishing memory I have with my grandpa. The trips to Minnesota. Oh, shoot. The trips to Minnesota, man, those were always great. The last trip I had to Minnesota was just him and I. And knowing that that was his last trip puts a good smile on my face, because he went with his buddy. And I went with him. And I don't know if that will be the last time I'll ever be in Minnesota. I really hope it's not, because I really want to go out there and see some family again. But besides that point, if that was my last ever trip, it's been the best trip, probably. Well, it was the best trip. Grandpa and I, we bullshitted every day. He got mad at me once for getting all dirty because I went into the mud with my dirt bike. Well, yeah, in the mud, and, I was covered in dirt and mud, my pants, the dirt bike, and Grandpa was so mad. But he never told me we were going to town. And I came back all muddied, and he was like, Jesus Christ, we're going to town, god damn it. And, I had to change. All it was a quick little change, and we left. But I'll never forget that either. That was funny. And, just the time I had with him up there was great. And there's so many stories I can tell. The time he built me a birdhouse, he built me a blue birdhouse when I was little. The time him and I, there's a funny story about my leg injury. The day I broke my leg, in Minnesota, there's a place called Battle Lake where we're in like we're by Phelps Mill. And if you live in Minnesota or like live by Fergus Falls, you probably know what I'm talking about, maybe. But we're by this thing called Phelps Mill, and that's where the lake is pretty much located. The lake we'd go to, Pickerel Lake, and that day I broke my leg. Oh, hi, Coco. Coco's checking on me, everyone. Ouch. The day I broke my leg, Grandpa and Grandma thought, take him to the ER take him by the ER in Battle Lake. It's a Sunday. Oh my goodness, my phone keeps on falling. Oh my goodness. Oh my. Okay, I'll put the cigarette case behind my phone so it don't fall. But anyway, they're like, take him to Battle Lake. The ER should be open. We drive there and the ER is closed. Come on, emergency room closed. That's one crappy ER. So we were driving to Fergus Falls, and we were like 45 minutes away. And, I'm in so much pain. And I'm sitting in the front seat, and there's this red slug bug, like 2 cars ahead of my grandpa. Well, no, a car ahead of my grandpa, but I could see it. And it's like the person keeps on tapping their brakes. They're driving slow. Like Minnesota, when you're on like the streets, it's like 55 miles per hour every street pretty much, besides when you get into town. That's when like the speed limit goes down to 30 or 25 or shit like that. And I think we were in a 55 zone, and the person was going like 35. And I looked at Grandpa, and just the person was driving so slow, and I looked at him, and I've never cussed in front of my grandparents until this day. I looked at my grandpa and I said, Grandpa, can I cuss right now? And he looked at me, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, go for it. So I started cussing. I was calling the dude a motherfucker, and I was madder than hell. And I started cussing him. He finally looked at me, and he goes, okay, that's enough, Sonny. So I stopped, and you know, I'll never forget that moment when I did that because, you know, he was laughing when he was driving because I was cussing and I was just so mad. But I'll never forget that. You know, that was a memory I'll always have. You know, him and I going fishing all the time and stuff. And there's just so much I could talk about, but I don't want to make this video too long. But all I want to say is he taught me a lot of stuff. He's probably the greatest grandpa I could ever ask for. And I'm so glad that he was my grandpa. I'm gonna miss him every day for sure. There's been a lot of talking about me getting my first tattoo in like memory of my grandpa, which I'm pretty sure that's what I really want to do is get a tattoo for him, so that when people look at it, they know who or like what's it about. So yeah, hold on. So yeah, so just rest in peace to my grandpa. I'm gonna miss him every day, but yeah. So like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And sure to miss you, Gramps.